Welcome back to another video, guys. Today we have another mod for my C5 Corvette drift car. Now this car, the oil temps have been getting really hot out on track, and today we have something to fix that. So over here I have the Lingenfelter oil cooler kit. This kit's about $600 and it comes with pretty much everything you need to get this job done. So we have a little bracket that mounts to, I believe, like the bumper area. And we got the cooler itself, we got the sandwich plate, and all the fittings and lines and everything that come with it. I will leave a link down in the description below. This is not sponsored, however, I'll be out, leave a link. So our first step is to remove the front bumper. There are some few bolts along the top, and then they're kind of tucked kind of precariously up under here to tie the fender and the bumper together. Okay, I couldn't find any instructions online on how to install this, however, I think I figured it out. So taking a look under the Corvette, I actually don't believe you had to remove the front bumper, but that's okay. This little bracket piece, I believe it sits like this. So you can see that slot lines up with that piece in the subframe. And I believe we'll have to drill some holes just in these little parts that you can actually reach behind of the front subframe. So I'm gonna go ahead and drill those holes, mark them up, center punch them, and then it's gonna sit about like that. So if you can see, it sits pretty low. This is actually a lot smaller cooler than I thought it was gonna be. So hopefully it does the job okay. But essentially the cooler will sit up in here about like that. So it's gonna be vertical. It's gonna kind of smush between, I believe that's the power steering cooler and the radiator fans. It's gonna be a little tight fit, not gonna lie, but I think she'll be about where she needs. What I did just then, I mounted the cooler onto the bracket so that way it fits exactly where it needs to, since it's a little bit tight, and kind of wherever it comfortably sits. I didn't want to just mark the bracket by itself. I wanted to actually mount the cooler to it first, so that way it'll sit in here nice and flush and kind of where it needs to sit. I'm gonna go ahead and center punch these, get them a little drill bit out, drill these two out. That way we'll have holes to mount the bracket to. Now I'm going to go ahead and mount the oil cooler officially to the bracket now that we have our holes drilled in the car. The Lingenfelter kit does come with some really nice hardware. It comes with two of these hardware kits, also with the sandwich plate for the oil filter housing. This is the gasket, and these are the two bolts. This is the plug, and this is the drain plug. Lovely little sandwich plate that's provided as well. So I believe these two holes is where it mounts to the car. Okay, got her all mounted up. She's looking good. I'm gonna go ahead and move along. I still don't know what this bolt's for, so that's a little concerning. Anyways, before I put it in, I'm gonna put the little AN fittings in here. I'm gonna make sure to oil up this little O-ring right on the top just a little bit. Make sure it doesn't dry out. Now with AN fittings, you do not want to over tighten them. That's the worst thing you can do. Just get them to a point where you're pretty confident, but not killing it. So just kind of snug it up. Now it's time to move on to installing the adapter block. Obviously you got to drain your oil for this, so we're going to look up in the oil filter location, and it's a little bit tough to see. I can barely even see it off camera. However, there are a few little bolts. If you bear with me, there are two little bolts up here that mount to, I believe it's the oil temperature sensor. They're two 10 millimeters. I'm going to get my little 10 millimeter socket and maybe a little wiggle extension, and I can get in there and take those two out. Unplug that sensor because that is where these two bolts are going to go to. It's going to end up just like that. That way we can route our lines to our cooler. Here's the oil temp sensor, those two little 10 mils. I actually ended up using a ratcheting wrench instead of a ratchet. Wrench would do just as well. So we're going to take this out of its little housing so that way we can put it into the Lingenfelter adapter block. So it's a little wrench along here, break that loose, and it'll come right out. There are instructions for this oil filter block. It does recommend to use thread sealant. Here's the Permatex stuff I bought. I like AutoZone or Napa years ago. It lasts forever. So first step, we're going to go ahead, follow this little diagram. Oil temp sensor, which we just pulled out of that little housing, is right here. We're going to go ahead and thread that into this hole. However, before we do that, I'm going to put just a dab of thread sealant. It's like thread tape. However, it's a little bit more malleable and a little easier to work with, in my opinion. So just a few little dabs of that. Might honestly be too much. And then we're going to thread her in here. Make sure to clean her up after you get the old stuff off, because there is thread sealant or thread tape on it from the factory. So we're gonna put it all the way in, put our little wrench on it, snug her down. Okay, not too tight, just enough. I'll check it here in a minute once we get it up in there and make sure she's where she needs to be. Turbo oil supply. This is not a turbo engine, so we're going to use the little block off plug that it comes with to block that port off. Thread sealant. Ooh! Gonna put a little thread sealant on this one as well to keep those threads nice and tight from the oil. Make sure it doesn't leak out. Make sure not to put too much thread sealant like I just did, because it can get into your oil kind of easily and you definitely don't want that. Get it in there, just gently snug it up. I look like I'm putting a lot of pressure, but I'm not. I'm just kind of tensioning however much I need. So now with all the ports set in there, we got our temp sensor, we got our block off plate because we're not a turbo motor. Now these two holes are for the bolts that will go into the car. They'll go through those two holes there, and it will bolt into where the original little temp sensor bolted into. However, you cannot forget that you want to make sure this mating surface is clean and not scratched, so be careful with it because we're going to put a little gasket on before we do so. I believe it can go either way. So I'm going to clean it up. I'm going to clean up this surface, I'm going to clean up the car's surface, and I'm going to put this gasket in and then put these little bolts through and torque it to 106 inch-pounds, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds. So that's about 12 newton meters, or not very tight at all. So we're gonna get in there. She's looking good. It did supply a new drain plug. Maybe this is just for the car, just a little gift. This escalated quickly. Ended up having to take the whole header out, and my stupid long tube header, the previous owner welded it to the whole exhaust. So whole thing is currently out of the car. I just didn't have enough room to bolt in these two Allen keys. I couldn't get my Allen in there or get them started very easily. So now I gotta go ahead and tighten them down, but I got the bolts started, which is really nice. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these two down and put on this top. I believe the hose that has the harder angle, I guess you could call it, would go on the top. And then this one would go here. I need to play around with it a little bit to get it where it needs to be, but I'm gonna go ahead and put these AN fittings on the block and then route it through, up and underneath to the front. Well, we got it all wrapped up. I'm sorry I didn't show you guys the last part of this install. However, it came out really, really good. So my only complaint with the kit is that the instructions really sucked because there was not any. I had to go in and kind of figure out what was what. However, we pretty much got it there. The last clip I showed you was pretty much where we finished off. I went ahead and put a V-band in my header because it was welded. So we got that taken care of. I bolted those two little bolts up, put the AN fittings onto the cooler, and then ran it to the front. But there she is down there looking all nice. This clip is filmed a couple weeks after what you just saw. I took it to a drift event, and definitely the oil cooler kept the oil temps a little bit lower. It wasn't perfect, but it was definitely a good upgrade. So I'll leave a link down in the description, Lingenfelter kit, if you want to check it out. Again, not sponsored. Lingenfelter, if you're watching this, hit me up. I need some more mods. So thank you guys so much for watching. If it helped you out at all, make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video.
That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? Hey, coming down like precipitation.